Hello, hello. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Hear me and see me. And testing one, two, one, two. Mm. All right. Well, before we get started, let's open with prayer and then we'll get going. Dearly Father, we just thank you for today. We thank you for the time we have together to fellowship. I pray that you would watch over each and every one of us, be with us, be with those who are struggling and have prayer requests. Lord, we just lift these up to you. You know what they are. And we just ask that you would guide and direct this conversation. It's in your holy name we pray. Amen. All right. Well, good Monday morning to you, I guess, depending on where you are. I consider 12 still kind of morning-ish, but thank you, Aldo. Pamela, got your emails. Thank you. And for those who are emailing about the beach stuff, I appreciate it. I'm still looking and trying to take the family to a little getaway the end of this month before school starts, and all of our summer plans were kind of derailed at the beginning of June, and you guys know what that was about. So, anyways, it's trying to make something happen here at the end of the month. So it's a little late, but we had a hurricane that's hitting today, or I guess it hit last night around 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. So I don't know what the coast looks like, and I haven't had a chance to follow up on any of the news on it. So I know it hit. I don't know if there's any damage or anything like that. So 49er fan. Yep, 9 a.m. in Alaska. Galveston. How's Galveston, Princess Leia? Rain 10 foot above level. Hi, Karen. Hi, Peach. Sir Peter Seville, Pookie, Linda, Queen of Props, Kevin C. Bless, Coco, uh, uh, BP&E, and BP&E. You got to forgive me. I always forget your name because I just see BP&E. I know you've told me about a half dozen times. Gwen Stone, Colleen, Gina, Moments Divine, Cheryl, Kay, Linda, Sarah, Lisa Elder. My mom's on here. I saw her somewhere. Keto Mama, Heather Christine, Just Vicky, Diane. Diane and I have met in Kentucky. I believe I got to teach a Sunday school class there at the church. And Sally, thank you. Sir Percival. 3 a.m. Tuesday morning in Australia, Queensland. Oh my goodness. Jan, hey Jan, Tom L, Shenandoah. Well, today we have a kind of action-packed discussion on the upcoming election. And look, I this is a very sensitive topic. If you haven't had a chance to read the article I posted on my website, just go there. I've also got a chart in there that I'm going to be referencing pretty frequently. So if you just want to go to the website, uh, rev310.net, and then go to that first article, it should be the last election question mark, and then down at the bottom there is a chart inside of that article. If you click on it, it'll get bigger, and that'll help you follow along with the conversation if you haven't read the article, which is totally fine too. We're all busy, and there's a lot of other channels going on, and everybody's uh, talking about different things. And Daniel and Faye from Coeur d'Alene. Oh, Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. How are you guys? I love that part of Idaho. Um, So just an update on some things. Ella's doing fine. She has still got her neck brace on. I think this week she goes in for an MRI. Oh, I think she goes in this Thursday, does the MRI, and then we'll find out Friday. I think Friday if she can take that neck brace off. But still getting mail from everybody. We've gotten your packages and letters and cards and things. So we've gotten mail from as far away as India, uh, Singapore, a bunch from Australia, Canada, the UK, Ireland, the Netherlands, South Africa, all over the US. I mean, it's been pretty overwhelming, and for an 11-year-old, that's a pretty cool thing to she feels like kind of like a rock star right now. So, anyways, I have a correction to make. Somebody emailed me and said, "Hey, Vladimir Putin is not 81; he's 71." So my correction, I am corrected now. And then Xi Jinping is also, I think he's 71 or 72. So, needless to say, these leaders that we're talking about from Russia and China are both in the twilight of their careers, and they are trying to get things done before they pass on. Soros is 149. Yep, that guy is. He reminds me of the emperor from the Return of the Jedi. Yes, Colleen, it was. Certainly, everybody on here, I'm sure, has prayer requests. So I pray for all of you guys, and even those that are unmentioned. I guess he's a cousin-in-law, but his sister just found a brain tumor. Her name's Julie. Keep her in your prayers. There is a women's shelter here. Well, it's not a women's shelter. It's a pregnancy counseling place. It's a Christian run. Pray for those guys. I will eventually do some programs with them coming up here in the not too distant future. So pro life is very near and dear to my heart. I just I think that it's just it's such a tragedy that our nation has tolerated this for as long as it has, and it's only going to continue to get worse. It seems like. Bubba News, hey Bubba, how are you? Let's see, Allison. I'm trying to see haven't if I haven't missed your name, I apologize. K Owen John Freilich. Did I say that right? And to my moderators, thank you in advance for doing what you do. Just shoot me the messages on Telegram, and I'll get to the questions at the end of this. I'm going to try and do a couple of live streams this week to make up for uh, the slowdown in the last couple of months. So my son is in the background playing Minecraft, and we have a dog in here. So we have one of the dogs. Hey, James, Dog Agent, Raindrops, Barbara R, Aldo. I think I got you, Marcus, Linda, Stilly. She says hi to Titus, Mr. Vax 2. Well, let's get going. um, before I start, I have some thoughts, just kind of that will help facilitate the discussion today. And I did list those in the article itself, kind of at the outset, talking about certain things. Let me get back. I'm gonna pull up my article real quick, referencing it. So, first things first. Yes, God is in control, regardless of what happens and what plays out here. I'm not trying to discount that by any stretch of the imagination. Acts 17:26 is a passage I reference frequently. God appoints the times and the boundaries and leaders and how long the nation will last. So ultimately, this was all in God's hands. For those of us who are not God, self-included, future. I'm not a nation. A crystal ball. I can't see into the future. I'm just looking at the facts today, um, referencing some historical stuff going on, and then trying to make a conclusion about what's happening in the world, and then in particular the U.S. politics and how that impacts the rest of the world. Um, losing the sound. Audio is getting fuzzy. Yeah, I'll have to try and stay a little closer to the mic, I guess. When I move around, I get very animated. Um, with that said, I know some of you feel like this is a selection and not an election. I get that too. I'm not defending our system. I'm not defending either candidate. I'm just simply looking at potentialities here. Um, I know JB Hickson is big on saying that this is a selection and not an election. I don't disagree necessarily. Um, but at the same time, I feel like we still have to participate in the process because we don't know how long we're going to be here. And if we're here for 2 or 3 months, it's a moot point. But if we're here for another 2 or 3 years, it's not politics, it's policy. Which policy are you going to live under and put yourself under, put your family under? I think that that is really what it's all about. Um, we have one political body that is vehemently anti-God, anti-Israel, anti-church, anti-Christian, and then you have the other major political party that is can be very wishy-washy, can be very you know uh, do nothing. They just want to fight for the status quo. I think that's the way it was in the past. I don't know if that's the way the next 4 years would necessarily play out with the Republicans. Um, if you think about uh, the way things were done in the past, if you're a Republican, generally the party will select and prop up the political leader that they want to represent the Republican Party, and that has largely been those who toe the line of the whatever the narrative is for the Republicans, and that has largely been driven by donors and by agendas, and uh, I think that's the way it was in the past. And then you had a guy like Trump that came in and completely flipped the tables, flipped the narratives, and said he started saying the quiet parts out loud, things that the Republicans didn't want to talk about, like the open border policies and the immigration and not having a wall, etc. And that, when he won, he began to change the party and bend the party to his own will. So now it's really a Trump party, um, and the Republicans are going to just have to follow his lead on this stuff. So I will also say for a second Trump term, if it happens, I think what would be different in this turn is he spent the last 9 years being investigated, being impeached twice. The court cases, the raid on his house in Mar-a-Lago, all of that stuff has definitely impacted the president to the point where he is not going to go in as perhaps naive as he did the last time. Now, again, I'm not defending Trump. I'm not. I'm just saying that this whole last 9 years has changed him, and he's learned from these things on who he can trust, who he can't trust, etc. So I don't. I don't. We don't want Trump as the. We didn't hire him or elect him to be the pastor in chief. He is not the pastor or shepherd of this church or this nation in a spiritual religious sense. He is simply a political figure who sets policies, and these are the policies that we have to live under. And I know, I think Trump's. I don't know if that he's pro-life. He's not pro-abortion, and he's not pro the abortion industry, whatever. He said, "Hey, this is going back to the states. The states can decide what they want to do with it." as it were, technology advances. You have these morning after pills and things that have come about that now have made abortion far easier and more accessible. And there's probably going to be far more abortions because of it. So, uh, you know, I'm not defending him as a his moral standings. I'm just simply looking at the policies. Whose policies do I want to live under if we're here for another couple of years? So that all I wanted just to get that out front first. Um, the things I let off in the article, I started talking about things like inflation, the real inflation numbers. If you look at the news, and I've checked this through a bunch of different sources, I think they're saying that the inflation rate's somewhere between 3 and 4%. I make the case that it's really much higher than that. Probably, hey, Pastor Gary, much higher. It's probably in the neighborhood of 10 to 15%. If you look at the cost of living, the purchasing power of a dollar, the prices across the board, I just can't see it being 3 or 4%. It feels much higher than than that. I did uh, look up some things about this, and some interesting things about where we are is we all know a quick history lesson. We all started, after World War II. U.S. Put forth the Bretton Woods Agreement, which basically made the U.S. dollar the reserve currency of the world, and that was kind of the way it was up until about 1971, when the U.S. had, prior to that, during the Bretton Woods Agreement, the U.S. dollar was backed by gold, and then every other currency of every other nation would basically use the U.S. dollar as that reserve standard. From there, by 1971, due to the uh, Great Society initiatives under Democrat President Johnson, the Vietnam War, just probably a myriad of other things, we quickly eclipsed more money that we had in circulation than we had gold to back it. And you had nations and basically countries begin to drop out of the Bretton Woods Agreement, beginning with West Germany, and other European nations, Switzerland and others, who began to sell off all their dollars. So our that's what the plan to go from Bretton Woods, the thing that precipitated or followed after that, was they had three options, right? First option is that they cater to the global uh, economics community. It's going to be best for the global economics. This is I'm talking about the U.S. government at that in the 1970s, early 1970s under Nixon. They had that option. The second one is they cater to the growing middle class and keeping that standard of living going up and up and up. And then the third option was to maintain power for the United States. And they went with option three, which is how they created the petrodollar, which they made the geopolitical arrangements and economic arrangements with the OPEC nations, primarily Saudi Arabia, and saying that, hey, we'll back you militarily, but you have to make all your oil transactions in U.S. currency. And so that's what the way it was. It's been that way up until here, just the last few weeks or so, or excuse me, the last couple of months, when the Saudi Arabians basically ditched that model and then opened up oil sales to all currencies, and then also aligning themselves with BRICS, which is dedicated to de-dollarization um, around the world. So we're starting to see this current system that we're under, the petrodollars, now beginning to collapse. So that also leads into the argument about the national debt. And just some clarifications on the national debt. The national debt is not like personal debt like you and I would have. Um, our currency since the 1970s has been based, our system has been based on debt. It's a free floating fiat currency, debt based fiat currency. And as long as our nation maintains the ability to print its own money, uh, the debt ceiling is more or less an artificial ceiling that we set on ourselves to curtail and limit spending, right? And we try to maintain a certain level of spending each year, but I think now by 2024 now I think we're spending around 2 trillion a year. So next year it'll be 35 trillion. The year after that it'll be 36 trillion, and so on and so forth. So not very soon we'll be right up at 40 trillion. And so the issue with debt is where the issues come in with debt is you have things like the debt servicing fees. How much does it cost to maintain this level of debt? You have debt to GDP ratio. How much of your GDP is going to paying the interest on the debts and things like on the national the $34 trillion. And the real issue is when you have a country is borrowing in other nations' currencies or taking debt out in other nations' currencies and not being able to pay that other currency. Because the way it's worked in the United States is if we need $100, I'm talking about, let's just pretend I'm the Federal Reserve and I need $100, I can just print $100 bill and it costs me like 2 or 3 cents. Um, if I'm another country, I'm Guatemala or whoever, um, I have to be able to produce $100 worth of goods or services to get that $100 bill. So for us, it doesn't cost us anything. For everybody else, it costs them goods and services that equate to $100. Now the problem is the more we print, uh, the more money is in circulation, and when other countries begin to sell off our debt, the debt that they have, like if they bought, like Japan, we have the foreign nation that has the highest amount of U.S. currency, holding U.S. currency or U.S. debt is Japan. And if they decided to dump all that, then that puts all that money back out into circulation if somebody can buy it. And then that means that each dollar that's there has been reduced significantly in what it can buy, which causes everything from a Big Mac cheeseburger to um, a car, a refrigerator, whatever the case is, it causes the price of those things to go up because now you know how inflation works. Your dollar buys less, so it requires more dollars to buy the same product. You look at your grocery bill from 4 or 5 years ago, compare it to today, and you'll see a huge markup of difference between what you bought then versus what you buy now, and the difference is pretty staggering, which is why I believe it's much higher. The interest rate is much higher, or the inflation rate is much higher than 3 or 4%. You got to take all the other things into calculation as well. And the U.S. government right now has basically three options. They can default, which I don't think they're going to do because that ruins, that's like basically going into bankruptcy. Our what we have with the strength of the dollar is right now is that it doesn't default, that it's a stable currency. Um, if we defaulted, we'd be, you know, what Greece did back in I think 2010 or 2011 when they couldn't pay their loans back. It would be very bad. It'd be catastrophic for the United States. We could print more money. That's option two, which obviously it leads to more inflation because you have more currency in circulation, meaning each dollar is worth less since there's more out there. And then lastly is to raise taxes. And so the raising taxes portion is what uh, no politician or no party wants to really get. They don't want to be tied to that because none of us want to pay more than we're already. So uh, that's in part the money side of it, right? National debt, you have the inflation, significant by and let's see what else I talked about. Replacements for obviously Biden when he agreed to do this debate with President Trump. Biden got to set the whole arrangements. Like he wanted it to be covered just by CNN. He didn't want there to be a live audience. Basically, Trump acquiesced to every single one of his demands, and it was just a disaster for President Biden. And he basically made obvious to everyone what most of us already knew, but what the media had been hiding for the last 3 or 4 years, that he was no longer capable of carrying out the roles as commander in chief physically, like physically and mentally. He is not capable of doing that. Uh, he has dementia. We all kind of knew that. I've been saying that since the day he took office. I didn't think he would finish out his first term. Um, and we could see from the State of the Union address and other times when he's had to get up and do these public speaking engagements, he has this kind of like blank of if stare. He's got the black eyes. He's got mouth agape. He's reading straight from the teleprompter, and he doesn't either doesn't take questions, and if he does, he goes way off script really fast, and he starts talking incoherently, can't finish his train of thought. He trails off into all these different directions, begins saying really nonsensical things like dog face pony soldiers or corn pop or whatever. He starts making up, really disembellishing, really, really grandiose kind of lies and things. Uh, you know, you guys don't need me to rehash all of that. We all know. We knew this, and yet this whole time, the media has been covering for him. So if you watched that debate and you were surprised at how much he's declined cognitively, you shouldn't have been surprised. And if you are surprised, you've been listening to the mainstream media too much, because we all been saying this from day one. He basically has no business being president right now, and that begs the question as to who is running the government in his stead. And you can make the arguments that it's his cabinet, whether it's Tony Blinken, Secretary of State, or Secretary Mayorkas as Secretary of Homeland Security, Pete Buttigieg, or Beetlejuice, as I like to call him, for transportation. Anyways, all of his senior cabinet staff, in collusion with probably his wife, Jill Biden, is the ones that are running this program, or running the administration for him, and they are making decisions on his behalf that have long-term ramifications, and in serious ramifications. The two of which, has been this open border policy, which Mayorkas has been running, and driving our national security into the ground, and he is doing great damage to the United States. And then you have guys like Blinken, who are withholding congressionally approved weapons from Israel. The Congress has already approved it, and it's being held at the State Department. You have, I think, Blinken also entering these 10-year security agreement with Ukraine, outside of the purview of Congress and everything. So these are things that they're making, these decisions that are going to have long-term serious ramifications for the United States. And as we've seen from the debate, and as what other insiders have said, Biden is not making these decisions. He might be signing his name. They might take him some paperwork between 10 and 4 when he's semi-functional and have him sign stuff, but he is not involved in the making of the sausage, as they say. And other people are running this country instead of him. And I would like to add to this kind of a side note here. So we know that the Supreme Court came out and ruled that, basically in President Trump's favor, that he has immunity for things done in the office of president, as pertains to things that he did as president in his presidential role. The downside to that is that also gives blanket immunity to things that Obama did and Biden has done and is doing. in the office that they're holding, uh, presumably going back at least to Clinton. Um, George H.W. Bush has since passed, and Reagan has passed, and so pretty much, I think Carter might still be alive, but uh, if they're still alive, I think they're granted the immunity for things they did as president in the role of president. Um, so that's the downside. Now, the upside to that also is that all of those cabinet members that I just mentioned are not covered under this blanket immunity. So, uh, I would I would likely see the Christopher Wray and all those folks, probably start looking at, um, living in non-extradition countries, should Trump win. Now, with that said, we already knew how bad Biden had been declining mentally for the last 4 years. Who authorized the decision to go ahead with this debate? Because you gotta remember the last election, they hid him. He was hidden from the public for months and months leading up to the election, and I think they had 1 debate, and he came out and he was all jacked up, and you could tell he's on some cocktail of whatever, keeping him awake and functioning and talking. But somebody had signed off on this, knowing full well how bad he is. And I got to think that there's a schism within the Democrat Party right now for those that want to keep Biden in office. And for me, those people would be like those people in the immediate um, purview of him running things right now, because they're the ones really running things. So they like that. They like being in that kind of power, the power behind the throne, so to speak, and they don't want to give that up. Um, and the other side are those folks that are not loyal to Biden but want Obama or whoever else to come in. And I think that they somehow uh, got this debate going, and just to highlight to the rest of the world how bad Biden's cognitive functions have declined. So that leaves the Democrats in a pretty serious situation right now, crisis moment for them, because all the money that's been raised thus far for Biden and Harris, that can't go to a different candidate. So let's just say that at the DNC they decide that they want to take Michelle Obama and Gavin Newsom. Well, all of that money that had been set aside and dedicated to the Harris or Biden Harris campaign can't go to them. It's going to violate all sorts of campaign finance laws and stuff like that. So whoever gets selected in August next month is going to have to basically drum up with a war chest from whatever they start at. So all that money is set aside and would presumably go back to the donors. Now, the second situation that they are facing is that uh, Harris, the push right now is to have Harris, or for Biden to resign, which means that Harris would automatically become president. And she has less favorable numbers than Biden does. Even right now, she has less numbers than he does. But legally and constitutionally, she has to be the one to take over. Now, that also presents the issue with Michelle Obama running, because for her to run, it would have been the first woman of color president in history, right? They had a man, now they want a woman. Except and she isn't. Harris would be, because Harris would have finished out the remainder of Biden's 6 months. So she doesn't get the street credibility for that. Secondly, she stated she doesn't want to run. Now, I kind of think that she would take the offer of to be president if it was bequeathed to her. She doesn't want to have to do the campaigning and doing all that stuff. She just wants it handed to her, then she could take over. But again, I mentioned that she's going to lose the street cred of being the first, which may not sound all that appealing to her anymore. That I don't know. Um, I think they kind of like the Obamas, like they don't want to go through all this again. They like being the powers behind the throne and having the spotlight off them, but still being able to operate and do whatever they want to do. Um, is my thought on that, that they like where they are right now. They don't wanna be thrust back into the spotlight because they basically are controlling the Democrat Party as it is. Um, let's see. The another issue is that you have a number of states. Ohio, for instance, already has Biden on the ballot as the Democrat candidate. I think there's 5 or 6 other states that, um or wait, no, I'm sorry, I have that backwards. Ohio, they have to have the candidate on the ballot by August 1st. So today is July 8th. They have less than a month to get this done. And then the other states, there's Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Biden is already the Democratic candidate on the ballots. So how they undo all that, I don't know. But that presents obviously issues. And then the last part of this is that Biden doesn't want to step down, probably at the request of his wife. She doesn't want to give that up. She knows that right now they are in the position of power. They don't want to give that up. The minute they give that up, um, they know how fickle the Democrat Party is. They don't. I'm sure they don't trust them as far as they can throw them, especially now with so many prominent Democrats coming out and asking Biden to step down and trying to encourage him to step down and basically commenting on how bad his mental state has declined. Uh, it's kind of like they've already opened that door and they can't close it anymore. So they've come out publicly stating that, for months leading up to the debate, all of them were saying, "Oh, Biden is sharp. He's always on his game. He makes all these decisions, and he's doing this, that, and the other." And then the debate happens, and they're all coming out afterwards saying, "Well, we knew he was, kind of slipping, and then maybe we don't know if it's a condition or if it's just a bad performance." And they're just, all the things that they've been saying. So the one thing that we can understand about the way the Democrat Party operates is that they'll come out with talking points and they'll come out with a narrative that they're going to run with, and they all parrot it. They all say the same thing. You see it all over the news. Whatever that talking point is, they all basically are saying the same thing. So they're lockstep. They're kind of like a group think. They all kind of say the same thing, thinking the same thing. Hive mind mentality, protect the party. Um, they don't really care necessarily for the individual unless that individual has performed at their top tier levels, like the Obamas and the Clintons. They'll protect some of those senior folks, but everybody else is just you're a cog in the wheel kind of thing. So now you have those issues going on with the Bidens, and we talked about the money, we talked about the inflation, we talked about the issues of what's going on with the United States presently. And I really don't think it matters who the Democrats put up. I think most people today can feel that they are worse off than they were when he took office. And if any Democrat comes along saying that he is going to or she is going to offer more of the same, I think people are going to resoundingly reject that. And with that said, let's talk about the upcoming election and what that means for folks. Okay. Oh, two more things. More thing really. The January I'm just gonna say J6. You guys know what that is. There's folks that have been in prison for years now for nonviolent protesting and things. Let me just say that I don't know how this scenario plays out, but the Democrats don't control the House of Representatives any longer. So they don't control Congress. Um, I don't know how that factors into this, other than it doesn't give them the advantage that they had a few years ago. So now they're at a disadvantage with the House versus where they were. They were in a position of strength back in 2020 now, and now they're not in that regard. So, okay. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to list out three. See if I've got it here. So basically, we have three. If you have the chart in front of you, um, the election logic tree is what I've called it. You have basically three major branch points of where decisions are made, yes or no, right? First decision point is, do we have an election? It's either yes or no. Either we have an election or we don't have an election. And my thought process on this is that if we don't have an election, it would have to be a crisis of magnitude equal to or succeeding or even going above and beyond something like World War II. Um, we know during World War II, President Roosevelt ran for an unprecedented 4 times and won 4 elections. So it would be something to that scale, like a World War III scenario, that the government, the current administration, could adequately and justify the decision to cancel the elections or postpone them or whatever for whatever time period because of the magnitude of the crisis. If you remember back to 2008, we had the mortgage meltdown stuff going on, September, October timeframe. And I think McCain and Obama both stopped their, or at least McCain stopped his uh, campaign to kind of address this issue. Can't remember if Obama did or not, but it would have to be even worse than that. It would have to be a scale matching that of like a World War III scenario. And then the second thing would be likely a terrorist attack of some magnitude, probably more than 9/11. It would have to be 9/11 kind of in multiple places at the same time. It would have to be considerably significant in order to derail the current elections. Now, with the open borders and things like that, that's not out of the realm of possibility. I just think that would have to be something super significant in order to derail the current election process. And it seems to me, it seems like given the setbacks the Democrats are having right now because of Biden, he has to be on the ballot in Ohio by August 1st or whoever the candidate is going to be. Then you have these other states where Biden is already on the ballot as the Democratic candidate. And I don't know that that can be changed without violating all sorts of rules and laws. That it seems likely to me that they would try to derail the election altogether because they can't win those states anyways if all things remain the same, right? Uh, but let's just say that we have the election and the electoral polling data that I've seen, multiple sources all have Trump winning decisively, and I even deep blue states are now leaning Democrat, and they're not no longer deep blue. They're like leaning Democrat. California, what Northwest, Northeast, um, still, it's shocking to me. But let's say that we do have the elections. Let's say that he does win, right? Here's the second major kind of branching point, or the branching point is Trump wins or Trump loses. So if Trump wins, which seems the most likely scenario right now, do the Democrats concede? And that's the other yes or no point. If they concede power to him and we have a peaceful transition of power, then we have president number 47, and we have whatever the next 3 to 4 years going into that is going to look like. But given everything they've put Trump through and all of the illegal and the unconstitutional things that they've done in the last 8 years against him and against the American people, and the fact that justice is going to be demanded by all of us in the form of bringing these people to court, suing them, uh, uh, put on trial, etc. I mean, there's a lot that's been done in the last 8 years that a lot of people need to answer for. I don't know that they would concede power. That's my big thing. I don't know that even if Trump wins, and he wins by such a landslide that they can't, no amount of fraud or you know ballot glitches or computer glitches and midnight ballot dumps, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that would even matter at that point. Now the question is, will they concede power? or where they try and drag this out. And so my thought process is they're going to try and drag this out. And so the answer would be no. And for that, they would need to introduce a bunch of what they've been doing, lawfare, where they introduce court cases against this, and they start trying to drag out the process, and very much in the same way that the Florida recount was in the year 2000, with the hanging chads and the ballot issues between Bush and Trump, or Bush and Gore. Uh, Now, I think that only lasted 5 weeks, if I remember, but it felt like it was way longer. But I think that we are if Trump wins the election, that there's gonna be a huge, delay in trying to prevent him from actually taking control of the government. Um, so that introduces another scenario. Do they introduce some kind of crisis to prevent that? Where they can somehow declare martial law and then, presumably arrest or detain the incoming administration on whatever charges. So we're in like a number of different scenarios here that are playing out that uh, it seems the momentum right now is at Trump's corner going forward, that he is going to win. And this time, as opposed to last time, he has the Republican Party coalescing behind him. I don't know that he will pick a VP. I doubt seriously he is going to let the Republican Party select a vice president for him. I think he is going to pick somebody that is very loyal to him and has been loyal to him throughout this whole last 9 years. Because we all saw how it turned out with uh, Pence, and Pence basically proved himself to be spineless. Well, he's not going to pick. He's not going to make that same mistake a second time. And I think he's going to find somebody that's incredibly loyal to him. And if they were to try and take him out, Trump, the guy replacing him is even more conservative than he is, and so it's kind of like what Biden did with Harris. You got to. There was some genius in why he picked her. She was far less, way less popular than he is, and so nobody wanted to get rid of him because they didn't want her. So I think Trump will do the opposite. He'll pick somebody that is incredibly articulate, conservative, loyal to him, has been his friend. They've known each other. And the Republican Party, like I said at the outset, he's not beholden to the Republican Party anymore. The Republican Party is beholden to him. So I think that's where the strength of his ticket will come into play. Now, do they actually get to take office? I have no idea. So that's the three major branches is, do we have an election? Does he win? Yes or no? And will they concede power? Will they go forward and do this peaceful transition of power? Those are the three key areas. In each of those areas, I tried to list out, have crisis points where they could become crisis, and those crises would then be used to prevent him from actually taking over, even if he does win. And so I think either one of any of those scenarios could play out. People have mentioned on my website in the comments about the rapture taking place first, which absolutely could happen. And if that happens, then everything else is kind of thrown out the window. The Democrats will take power and continue their march the nation off the cliff. And we have that kind of scenario. Now, if we get to the last point, so if we get to where we have an election, yes, so there's no crisis. Trump wins. Uh, yes, he's able to navigate all the mail-in ballot issues and the computer glitches, etc., and he still wins. And they concede power, or if we get to that point, and now the question is whether the Democrats will concede power or not. If they choose not to, or choose to introduce crisis or new kind of scenario where they can introduce or bring about martial law or some kind of state of um, affairs for American life at that point, much like we did in 2020 with the lockdowns and stuff. If they're able to do that, then I see that there's a did that come in there? Nice. Um, then that's the scenario where I see that like a civil war type scenario playing out, where the outgoing administration would institute some kind of martial law, and then at that point, there is 100 million Americans up in arms, and it would be very chaotic. Now, if let's go back to one point. Let's just say that Trump loses, and the numbers don't make any kind of sense. Uh, let's say that you have a state that has, say, 5 million people in it, and there's 7 million ballots cast decidedly for Biden or whoever replaces Biden. And there's not that many voters. Obviously, there is voter fraud. There is something going on. There's too many votes to count. So then that introduces a delay, right? That could be a delay because now we have a number of states that have so many ballots, and you don't know. You're going to have to go through and manually sort through, thousands, tens of thousands of ballots. Oh my gosh, that's going to take forever, right? And that again, that would work to the Democrats' favor. That would work to their favor to delay Trump from actually taking over. So do I see all if things just were to happen without any major crisis, right? I can see Trump winning. I can also see a number of states are having all manner of counting issues, and now that's going to delay stuff because you have people on the right, Trump's team, the Republican Party, and so on and so forth, will be issuing. Um, uh, they're suing or whatever the case is to try and get to the bottom of what's going on with these things. And during that time of waiting and uncertainty is when this crisis happens. And then when this crisis happens, that's when things like martial law can be declared, et cetera. So any number of these scenarios could play out. And honestly, given everything they've done to him right now, nothing is off the table in my mind. Nothing is off the table. Now, this doesn't even take into account stuff going on with Israel, who, when I'm thinking like World War III type scenario, I'm not thinking Israel. I'm thinking like Russia, Ukraine, NATO, China, Taiwan, that stuff. But certainly Israel is going to factor into this very heavily. And I don't know. It's very very hard to say how things are going to play out. I'm not even trying to give an answer of what I'm just listing out scenarios like, okay, if this happens, if X happens, then Y has to happen. And if Y happens, then Z has to happen. Like just listing those things out that way and trying to think through what could the crises be depending on where we are in that election process. So in order to backtrack real quick, or to summarize rather, in order to derail the election altogether, when people are saying we're not going to have election, it would take a crisis of magnitude. Seriously, it's going to take something that big. Now, if it is a medical issue like a pandemic type scenario, given what we've already gone through and the skepticism and everything else going on with that, I'm thinking that would have to start somewhere in the neighborhood of like mid to late September, maybe late August to mid to late September. We would start seeing that stuff come out in the news in a big way. And the problem I think with this time around is that the first time when Charlie Vector 19er came out, we weren't seeing the crisis. We were hearing about it. We were having the media tell us it's a crisis. It's a crisis. It's going to be, uh, you know, death and destruction everywhere. We didn't see it, so nobody believed it. And then as time went on, we knew what it was. It was a plan. This was all planned out. Um, but I think this time around, if there is something, I think it will be serious, and there will be a high mortality rate to it. And that is something that uh, I don't know. I don't know how we navigate that particular turn if it happens that way. But I think they would need the requisite amount of time in order to get everything in place that they need to get in place. Because right now the Democrats are scrambling with trying to come up with what they're going to do. Biden doesn't want to step down, and there's no real good replacement. And then on top of that, you already have Biden on a number of states as the candidate. So, excuse me one second. Coughing. All right. if we have an election, and here's where I think it starts to dip a little bit, where you have the election, but Trump wins or Trump loses, either way. Uh, I think that crisis that's introduced at this point would be less severe, um, but still enough to cause delays or cause issues. And I see this really coming in the form of fraud, cyber attacks, that kind of stuff, to where you can't trust there is uncertainty cast all over the election process altogether. So we don't even know if it counts, if it matters, who's ahead. I mean, this is where I think the greatest amount of uncertainty is going to be in this point right here. Now, if Trump wins again, uh, I think that this is where another serious crisis, not as bad as what was required to prevent the election, but still magnitudes higher than if he wins or loses. I think this is where, if he wins, it will be maybe more. This is where like the medical thing comes out, and they have to declare some state of martial law or whatever, or a World War III type scenario. Maybe not World War III, but some thing where we have to drop we go to DEFCON 1, and then it kind of goes from there. So whatever that scenario could be. I find it, if he does take over and he does win, or if we have the election, he wins and then he takes over, um, I have a hard time believing that things are just going to go smoothly from November 5th to January 20th. I think there's going to be all manner of things thrown in there. So it's hard to say what exactly will happen. But I present that to you just as food for thought, to think through some of this stuff so that we don't go into it blindsided. And I certainly think that the Republicans across the board, from the state governments all the way up through the federal party, is much more cognizant and cautious going forward into this one, as rather than they were last time. So again, the Republicans still control the House by a slim margin, but they still control it. And some of those things that they had advantages back in 2020, they don't have anymore. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, obviously, my preference would be that we're raptured before that. However, uh, none of us get a say in that. It's just kind of like, it's going to happen when it happens. But okay, that's pretty much the article in a nutshell. Again, read through it. I try to think through this thing pretty logically. Again, I'm not holding Trump up as our savior or anything like that. All I'm saying is that if we're still here and we have to live under one of these two administrations, I would prefer to live under one rather than the other. And I think most of you would do. It's not it's not saying that one guy is morally superior. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying one party is vehemently anti-God, anti-Christ, anti-church, anti-Israel. The other one is not, to whatever degree, right? I do list out some of these. I call them courses of action: most likely, least likely. One of the things I think surprises people when I put the least likely as being an economic collapse. Um, I did put in there that the U.S. economy, for all its faults, is still incredibly robust. I mean, you got to think that we're not a nation that's solely dependent on one thing, right? Like Saudi Arabia is solely dependent on oil. We're not solely dependent on oil, and we're not solely dependent on our manufactured goods, or even services or anything like that. It's very vibrant in terms of what we're capable of producing and selling to the world. Um, and I don't think an economic crisis, which would play to Trump's strengths, would be the crisis that they choose, simply because he did successfully run the nation in terms of the economy under his first tenure, and he's a successful businessman. He's a multi-billionaire. So clearly, money. I don't think that they would play to his strength in this regard. I think that uh, it would be something just like you know Charlie Vector 19er was not Trump's strength. He had to rely on the uh, the establishment that was already there. See folks like Fauci to if they're and come to find out, we didn't trust Fauci. That's not to say that I think he didn't know what he didn't know. He was just going along with it. And not seem like he was doing anything. I mean, Trump's all his strengths is his big fallback or his big takeaway is his big detractors is that he's very prideful. And that pride, the hubris, is that he wants to solve whatever the issue is. Now, maybe he learned his lesson. I don't know. But maybe, having lived through all this, and I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse with all that's happened. Now, ultimately, we know that the United States is not going to go into the time of tribulation, the last 7 years, as the United States of America, like the Republic, the Constitutional Republic. Whatever, we're not mentioned by name in the last 7 years. There are illusions that she is Mystery Babylon, which certainly could possibly be. There are illusions that she might be one of the offspring young lions, Ezekiel 38 in Gog Magog battle, and that they don't come to Israel's aid at that point either because they're politically it's too hot a subject to touch, or they just are not geopolitically capable of doing anything because the United States is in such a bad place. I tend to think that the crisis that ultimately derails the United States of America is going to be the rapture of the church. And that will be the thing that triggers the collapsing of the US, which creates the geopolitical vacuum for the rise of these 10 kings who ultimately form some type of imperial regional government over the world. And then out of those 10 kings, they ultimately or one rises up to be the 11th, and then 3 of them give their support to him. He subdues them, and then he becomes the 8th, right? So he is now what we call the Antichrist. And so that ultimately is where the world's going to end up, under this beast government that controls everything. Now, the United States will still be here geographically, like on a map, will still be there. But our system of government that we have right now is not going to exist like that any longer. We will not be called the United States of America. We'll be called something else, or we'll become something else. And it will not be. It's very much just like Rome. When Rome went from being a republic to handing their power and authority over to one man, Augustus Caesar, who then became dictator for life. Rome didn't fall off the map. It still was there. The city was still there. The nation of Italy was still there. Their empire was still there. It just now had to change of government. And I think that's very much the way the U.S. will be, whatever the U.S. becomes at that point. And it'll just be part of the beast system. So, but the United States is not mentioned specifically, which tells me that there is a significant change between now and then. So we know ultimately that's where the world's going to move to. And we see it moving that direction very rapidly in terms of technological advancements, economic advancements towards a digital currency, the central bank digital currencies. We see this moving in the forms of technology in terms of what they can put into the body and how that can be tied to the internet and so on and so forth. We see this geopolitically with the nations that are aligning against Israel. We see the Gog and Magog coalition forming. Basically, they're already formed. So it wouldn't take much for them to kind of turn against Israel at this point. I think certain things will have to happen prior to that. I think there'll have to be a conclusion to Ukraine, what's going on in Ukraine right now. And I think there will have to be a divorcing of sorts between Turkey and NATO, where they fully turn their backs on NATO and side with Russia, which is already in the works. And then we see this religiously, these huge pushes to uh, basically bring all the world's major faiths under one banner. And we see that in places like, I think it's in what is in Abu Dhabi, where you have the three temple, the mosque, and then you have the church or whatever next to each other. So I think that there's certainly that the world is moving in that direction. And one of the last things I think that it's not in the article itself, but one of the things I've been thinking about of late is the I hold to the view that the seven churches in Revelation 2 and 3 speak to the seven church eras of time, it's periods of time that would come about throughout all of Christendom, right? So the church has roughly been on the earth here now since we're coming up on the 2000th anniversary of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. I hold to the year 33 AD, so we're coming up on the year 2033 here in the not what 9 years or so. Um, and the fact that the church now is as fractured and divided into so many different groups, more than it ever has in the last 2000 years. So if you think about it, seven is the number of completion, of perfection, right? But also, it also means completion, of fullness of it, right? We see the number seven used throughout this book of Revelation numerous times. And if seven churches are chosen that Jesus is addressing, and they're each different churches with different issues and different things going on, even though they were real churches in John's day, the order that they're put in also speaks to the predominant periods of Christendom that would come throughout the next 2,000 years. Now, John may not have known it was 2,000 years, or none of the apostles did, but Christ certainly knew that when he was going to come back, it's not going to be for a while. And this seven churches would come to chronicle seven periods of time within church history where a church is the dominant base of Christendom around the world. Certainly, the Roman Catholics proclaim that from about the 5th century AD all the way up to about the 15th century AD. So we had the Protestant Reformation. But since the Protestant Reformation, we've had this explosion of different churches that have come about. And really, it's in the last 100 years, this is really multiplied like tenfold. So think about it this way. You have the early church, right? Those early churches begin to fragment over doctrines and geographic distances and culture, etc. And then eventually around the 5th century, 4th, 5th century, you have the rise of what we would call Roman Catholicism. So you still have like the church, and you have Roman Catholicism that's a systematized Roman Catholic system. Church, which is kind of the marrying of the church with government. And then you have the Protestant Reformation, which at that point introduces, I think right off the bat, you had Lutherans, you had Anglicans, you had Presbyterians, you had Episcopalians, were the four kind of big ones. But even before that, you had the Anabaptist and you had some other groups. But now, I mean, we have 5 different flavors of Catholic. So you have Eastern Catholic, Oriental Catholic, Orthodox, Roman Catholic, and then there's another Catholic. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. But then in the Protestant side of it, you have the Episcopalians, Anglicans, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Baptist, and then in the Baptist you have all different flavors of Baptist now. But and there's another one, I can't remember the name of it. It is it's the folks that fall under the umbrella of like the Amish, the Mennonites, the Brethren. There are groups that fall under like the Anabaptist, right? And now within Baptist churches, you've had a huge departure from the Southern Baptist Church And now you have a whole bunch of these non-denominational churches, and you have Free Will Baptist, you have Southern Baptist, Northern Baptist. I mean, there's all manner of Baptists. You have basically all the denominations are splitting apart because one side wants to go woke or liberal, and the other one wants to remain traditional Orthodox. So there's probably in the neighborhood of 30,000 different types of Christian churches today, maybe more than that. And that's the most fractured we've ever been as a body of believers, right? In terms of how we identify ourselves around the world. And it seems to me that at the last church, Laodicea, that is represented in that, um, a representative of just the name Laodicea, the people rule, and you start to see this explosion of different types of Christian faith all around the world. Uh, to me, that goes hand in glove with the fact that it's number 7, it's the last church. Now, because the order that those churches are put into, that's why I hold to this. If the church of Ephesus was put in last place and Philadelphia was put in the second church and so on and so forth, that would make none of that would make any sense. But the order that they're in now, it seems to fit church history. We can look back through uh, in hindsight, and we can look at how the church has evolved over time. Depending on the rise and the fall of the empires and the powers that be, we can see the church kind of moving through all that. So I think that Christianity itself, Christendom, is also represented in this, how we know we're at the last moments of the last days. So okay, let me go to let's say hi. Ella says hi. How many more days? 2 more days? 3 more days?
Tomorrow's Tuesday.
So you do your
What is tomorrow?
oh, you do your MRI on Thursday? Yeah, so we'll find out after the MRI. She can get that neck brace off. Don't be shy, come on. All right. Hey, sit there. So, I personally, I don't think that we're gonna be here much longer. You know, I don't think we're gonna be here in the manner of years. I've done this video with Tyler and I, the Final Four. We looked at I'm looking at a window of time from 2023 to 2026, and this is the same window of time I've held to for a very, very, very long time. And I just think that we're at that kind of point, and things are now kind of falling into place. So how does Trump and Biden factor into all that, or how the elections factor into it? I couldn't say. On one hand, I could point to like Luke 17, and where Jesus is talking about the days of Noah and the days of Lot, and there's a sense of normalcy to the world because people are buying and selling and marrying, giving in marriage, and planting and sowing, and buying and selling and all of that. There is a theme of normalcy bias kind of there, and then sudden destruction happens. So I can see it from that perspective. I can also see it that things continue to deteriorate for us here in the West, um, under a more increasingly totalitarian system. I see that less, though. I see more of the normalcy thing happening. But either way, I think we're there. And I'm hoping, like many of you, that this is the year. But it may not be, which goes back to the point of who do you want to live under? Which system, whose policies do you want to live under between now and then? And obviously, I mean, I'm biased. I want to live under a system that's less um, anti-Christian and less anti-God. And not only is it less oppressive on us to see that, but think about it this way too. If you lived in North Korea, how much opportunity would you have to share the gospel or to meet together like this or meet at a church or any of those things? Practically none. I mean, you're underground, hiding your faith the entire time. Um, I wouldn't say underground. You're basically couldn't tell anybody. I mean, you don't know who to trust anymore. It'd be incredibly uh, dystopic in terms of how you live day to day. And then I think on the other hand, um, that the world seems to be relatively normal. And I know that normal is a subjective term. Like, we're used to a certain level of death and violence and corruption and crime and that kind of. And when we start to see those things peak, there's a noticeable spike in those things. We sense it. We sense that this thing is something is wrong. It just seems to me that there is a sense of normalcy to the times that people live in. And I know that, again, normalcy is subjective. If you live in Canada and you're a Christian, obviously you're living under a much more totalitarian system than we are, or Australia or the UK, um, because you don't have the same safeguards in the Constitution that we do. Uh, but going back to Acts 17:26, God appoints the countries, the boundaries, the times and places for these nations to rise and fall. And that leads me to believe that there was a purpose and a reason why the United States is the way it is, and that the US has its influence spread throughout the world. It so permeates the world that in our collapse, in a sudden collapse, that's where that creates that vacuum that allows this beast kingdom to rise in the first place. If the United States is already at the bottom of the geopolitical trash heap and we collapsed because of the rapture, then it's not really creating the necessary or the requisite vacuum. So, and I know that if you're from another country and you're listening to me, you're like, "Ah, this guy's so American centric, Amerocentric." I'm not. I'm not Amerocentric in that regards. I'm just looking at it from the biblical standpoint that if God is in charge of putting in and setting the times and boundaries for nations, and He put the United Nations or the United States here when He did for the purposes that He did, and now that our time is done, if He collapses us first and then the rapture happens, there isn't that geopolitical black hole that has to be filled. There isn't that urgency to fill it. If for example, if Greece collapsed, it has collapsed. The world barely noticed. I mean, you might have had some people that had money tied up in Greece and they felt it, but personally, but the rest of the world just kept trucking along. Same thing with Argentina. Same thing with Mexico and any other country. Zimbabwe, you know, if you talk about hyperinflation, the Zimbabwe is a great example. But the fact is that nations like that have risen and fell and collapsed and come back, and then the world just keeps chugging along. But if the United States collapses, it will be felt around the world, and it will create the necessary vacuum that is required to establish a 10 beast kingdom. Okay. So it's a minute, or excuse me, it's an hour and 20 minutes roughly. I'm going to go to your questions now. Thank you, Sarah, again for collecting all these. Judith Maynor asked, Trump is now okay with abortion. What are your thoughts? Again, I'm not trying to elect him as pastor in chief. I'm looking at policies and whose policies do I want to live under. The Democrats are 100% pro-abortion. There's not even a question. What Trump feels personally, I don't even care. The fact that he handed this, or the fact that under his tenure he elected or was nominated the Supreme Court justices that then allowed Roe v. Wade to be overturned and then handed back to the states, and the states decide, depending on where you live, how they want to deal with abortion. And to me, that's not the most biblical answer, but that is certainly a constitutional answer to how that question should be handled. If you live in a state that's conservative and you lobby your congressmen and your representatives to champion pro-life, which is requires us to be political in the sense that we need to be involved. Because if we just say no, I don't want to get involved in any politics at all, then don't be surprised at the policies that you end up living under, because somebody is going to be making those decisions for you. There are a lot of good Christians in Oregon and in Washington and California that, and I'm not blaming y'all. I'm just saying that too many Christians have not gotten involved, and it's allowed those states to be dominated by very leftist progressive policies that are increasingly oppressive. Um, and that's because Christians don't want to get involved. And so I'm not a dominionist or anything like that. I don't think that the church is going to convert the world over to Christ and then Christ can return. I don't think the church is going to conquer the seven mountain mandate or any of that stuff. I just think that it does require us to be involved in our communities and to be involved in our um, local politics, which could be state politics as well. Um, to be vigilant about that, or else we we silence ourselves, we censor ourselves in those regards, and allow other people to make those decisions for us. And I simply I don't want to sit quiet and let some leftist progressive come in and start dictating to me how I'm going to live. I want to fight that politically and challenge that and drive it out, so I don't have to subject myself to that kind of uh, Luciferianism. Okay, in hoc signo vinces. Question, Pete. Thoughts on Ezekiel 28:21 through 26. Does he think it could be speaking of the coming war between Hezbollah and Israel, or was it fulfilled in the past? I was looking for my Bible in here. I think I left it in the kitchen. Let me pull it up real quick. All right, let's see. Ezekiel 28. 21 through 26. Son of man, set your face towards Sidon against her and say, Thus saith the Lord God. Behold, I am against you, O Sidon. I will be glorified in your midst, and they shall know I am the Lord when I execute judgments in her, and I am hallowed in her. For I will send pestilence upon her, and blood in her streets, and the wounded shall be judged in her midst, and the sword by the sword against her on every side. Then they shall know that I am the Lord, and they shall no longer be pricking briar or painful thorn for the house of Israel from among all those who are around them, who despise them, and they shall know that I am the Lord God. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if this is specific to Lebanon or if this was some past aggressor to them. Because we see at the first part of this chapter, the king of Tyre. And obviously, we know that Tyre was an enemy to Israel back in ancient times, right? Biblical times. And then it refers to Lucifer in that second part of that. This is an allusion to Lucifer. I don't know. Honestly, I know that Lebanon fits the geographic location for that, but I don't know that that is specific to her right now. I would default that question to more of a pastor, somebody that's gone to seminary and has probably heard far more in detail on that than I have. Good question, though. We have several pastors here. I think Kurt's here. Yeah, Kurt and hey, Kurt and Pastor Kurt and Pastor Gary are here. Maybe you guys want to speak up to Ezekiel 28:21 through 26. Is that referring to Lebanon, or is that specific? Was that something dealing with something back in biblical times? See, Bill Salas makes an argument for Ezekiel 28 for Lebanon. Could be. He makes a case for Elam, Jeremiah, 49, 50, somewhere there. The attack of attack on Elam being they were destroyed to such an extent that nobody ever lives there anymore, which could speak to the radiation fallout, the nuclear fallout from all their uh, reactors and stuff they have going on at that particular part of Iran. I don't know. Okay, Aldo asks, is there any third-party candidates, or do we vote for lesser of two evils to keep the most evil out? The only third-party candidates I know of are RFK Jr. and there is a, I want to say there's probably a libertarian candidate and then a Green Party. There usually is. I would say that if you go outside of the two-party system, you're going your vote away. But vote your conscience. And I know some people don't believe their votes count, but if everybody believed that their votes didn't count, then nobody would vote, and then obviously whoever the candidate that had somebody actually voting for them would win. You know that Stalin used to say, what did he say? It's not how many votes you it's not how many votes you get. It's like who counts the votes is what matters. And certainly 2020 that was at play. I don't know if it would fly again this year. Too much spotlight has been put all over that. So Pamela, question: if they decide on an open convention, does that change the rules about all the donations on who they go to, or does all the money still go to Biden Harris? So my understanding is that in an open convention, all the money that Biden and Harris raised is theirs. That can't go to another candidate. If they decide to go with two other people, like Obama and Newsom, they would basically have to start from zero, or whatever they started raising from that moment forward. But all the money that had been allocated to Biden and Harris is allocated to Biden and Harris, and they can't use that money without violating all sorts of campaign finance laws. Same with the votes. The number of states that I listed out, Georgia, Arizona, stuff, they already have Biden as the candidate on their ballots. And then Ohio, the decision has to be made by August, the first week of August. So the only way that they can keep that war chest going is if they keep Harris on that ticket. It would have to be Harris and somebody. And look, let me give the Democrats a little bit of kudos here. If they are innocent, they are master survivalists. They know how to survive politically. And if somebody will say, well, why doesn't Obama run in Harris? As you think he's a good president, he or she is a good student. Barack Obama could be the VP. Somebody had mentioned this to me, and I can't remember who it was, but if I were Harris, I would know right off the bat, hey, this is not good for me because they're looking to take me out pretty quickly, and I would not go along with that at all. You want somebody on there that makes you irreplaceable, and putting an Obama on there makes you very, very, very replaceable, or a Clinton. So she is not going to do something that puts her own neck on the line like that. I can't see that happening unless they have her over the barrel in some way that she can't get away from it, some blackmail thing or whatever. I don't see that ever happening. She would bring on a Whitmer or a Newsom, but she would not take on somebody that everybody would want to replace her with. So they're survivalists, man. They know how to survive. They know how to lie, and they know how to survive. And that's like putting your head in the mouth of a tiger and trying to negotiate from that position. That's not gonna happen. Florida Mermaid. Hey, Florida. Tomorrow at the Valley in Florida. I don't know. He may wait. Well, he has to do it by the Republican convention, obviously, but I don't know that. I know our convention is before the Democrat convention. So obviously you'll have to, if that person is from Florida, he may save that for rallies, whoever that person is. Let's just say hypothetically he goes with like Ben Carson or somebody. He might wait for the opportune time to do that with Ben Carson or Vivek Ramaswamy or Tucker Carlson, whoever. I have no idea. JD Vance, whoever he's going to select. He said he already knows who it is, so I'm assuming any of those candidates, potential candidates, would have had to go through the vetting process. So I guess you would have to look at all the people that have been given the vetting paperwork. And I think you can find that out. I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard that you can find that thing. Maybe somebody out here wants to go on Google real quick and see if that's been put out there and put out all of this. I'll do it again. Will we ever see a third party ever get enough votes? No. No. In fact, I think if you were to ask somebody like JB Hickson or whatever, that decision to go to a two-party system was made like 120 years ago by the Luciferian elite folks or whatever. That the two-party system is, it would have to be. Let's just say a hypothetical here that I did not list out. Let's say that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama can't run as Democrats. And I don't know the specific laws on this, but I know they can't run for president again. Or at least I know that they can run as a vice president. But let's say that you were to put like Michelle Obama and Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton's her VP. So now you have the Obamas and the Clintons together, which I don't think would ever happen because they can't stand each other. But let's just say that happened and they formed the new Progressive Party. Democrats would flock to that in a heartbeat, right? And that would be the case where like a third party could come about. Because if they're locked in this Democrat Party right now with the candidates that they have and there's no good options for them, could a third party come about out of that from two well-known quantities like a Clinton and an Obama? That could happen, maybe. I don't think they would win, but I think that could happen. But that would definitely, the Democrat Party at that point would be done, and whatever this new party, the Progressive Party or whatever, would come out, that would be the new left party. Similar to, well, I think you're thinking more along the lines maybe of the French election that just happened, parliamentary election, where they had three parties. You have the Marine Le Pen's right party, far right. You have Macron, who's a centrist, and then you have the socialist. I don't remember the guy's name. They're called like the National Front, populist or something, or National Front Progressives or something. They were the Socialist Party. So they have their two-tiered election system there. So if any candidate is able to get 50% or more of the vote, they don't have to go through the second iteration. But if any other candidate, if they don't get, if none of them get above 50%, then they have to go to the second voting block. Marine Le Pen had won the first, she didn't get it, so she got 30. And this is huge for her. That's the biggest thing right there. But in the second round of voting, the socialist candidate dropped out, and then all of their supporters went to, or one of the groups dropped out, and they basically jumped out to far right. So they won it that way. So, but I don't see us having a third party unless it's by two known entities that are incredibly popular with the left. And I mean, it could have happened with the right if the Republicans had embraced Trump and Trump still had won in 2016, and there was thoughts about dropping them in the 2020 election because they basically were stonewalling him and basically making it just as hard for him to get things done as the Democrats were. But he stuck with the Republican Party, and now they're coalesced around him. So it's hard to say. I don't see a third party coming about them. Okay, Stasha? Hopefully I said that right. Stasha? What are your thoughts on voting for Jesus? Man, like I said at the article, I'm a monarchist. I'm waiting for the king to return. He's the only one that's going to make everything right here. He's the only one that can fix it. However, he is not on the U.S. ballot. So I think be like doing a write-in vote. I mean, it's basically giving whoever is winning the edge, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans. So, but obviously, I'm a monarchist. I'm waiting for the Lord to return. In my heart, that's where I'm hoping it's this year. So, but I, I get the sentiment. Yeah, I wish we could. Let's see. Cheryl Whitman, what are your thoughts on the elections just taking place in France and the UK? So I just talked about the French elections, and that was a parliamentary election. Basically, you have Macron, who's a centrist, as the prime minister, and then you have the socialists that basically are going to control parliament. And I am not too up on the UK elections. I know that the Reform Party is their conservative party, like their Trump party. I think Nigel Farage was their candidate, and they did not win. I don't even pretend to understand how the voting precincts work inside of the because they got the second most votes, but they only have a minuscule representation in parliament. So I don't know how that works. Um, and I think it has to do with where they vote from or something. Like population percentage or something. If you live in Oregon and most of the state, I would say 80% of the state is conservative, but the population isn't there. And the last 20% of the geographic territory of Oregon all along the coastline, the western coast, and they have the bulk of the population, and they all vote leftist or Democrat or whatever, then it impacts the whole state. So it's not that ask Gary to maybe speak to that a little bit better than I can. Saw somebody say something about my microphone. Hey, honestly, it's not my microphone; it's my internet. Right now, radio signal, whatever. Like we get from the nearest tower, and my router's good. I have a good router system. I have decent bandwidth, but until I get my they call it fiber cable internet, open what the fiber cable net, fiber cable or fiber internet. My internet's still going to be in and out until that happens. It's already my house is already wired for it. They just came a couple weeks ago, wired everything. They've got the neighborhood wired. We're just waiting for them to actually turn it on. So Scotty Z, maybe it's a Christian router. For narrow is the bandwidth. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I'm super stoked waiting on this fiber to come and once I do that, man, I can really start to really do a lot of different things and I'll start streaming through a different platform because we're actually to go through it's just another layer that part. It's just it's painful. I don't think I've had an interview with anybody in the last 2 years where either I didn't drop or they dropped because of the bandwidth issues. And when I was in Kentucky, I was in far east Kentucky, like basically in West Virginia, and the internet there wasn't any better than it is here. So it's just part of living out in the sticks, I guess. Okay, Colleen Cardwell, who might be the 10 kings? Regional kings, maybe, might they be Nephilim? I don't know. The way things are going today in the world, it seems like it's and certainly more power and wealth than even a lot of national leaders. If you look at the power of the guy that owns BlackRock and State Street and all these other major financial systems, they have a lot of money. Head of Google, even guys like Elon Musk and uh, when you have that level of wealth that you can basically buy your way out of anything. I mean, it's hard to defeat that. Okay, I don't know who they are. I just know that in what seems to me apparent, the collapsing of the United States creates a requisite geopolitical black hole that allows for a restructuring of the world. And in our absence, because we're the biggest roadblock right now, I think that's what opens the doors world to realign itself regionally. Maybe under the auspices of the United Nations, we certainly would break apart into some kind of club of Rome type of scenario where regional powers to become limited. The nationalism goes away, and you have a block like the EU as a block, and maybe North America, where it's Mexico, United States, and Canada all get blurred into one kind of region, and then you have one or two leaders per those areas. So it's hard to say who they are. It's easy to imagine them ruling the world in that regard, in a regional sense. It's hard to specify who I think would be good candidate. Because I'm looking at it from an American perspective, and if you're from France or you're from the UK or from Australia or whatever, you're thinking of people in Europe, wherever you live, as who are the power brokers where I live. And so it makes sense that Europe picking power brokers for where you live, being good candidate. Good thinking. Okay, as far as the Nephilim question goes, I don't. Again, I am not a believer in that the Nephilim are going to be like they were in the days of Noah or even afterwards. You know, speaking about giants and those kind of things. I think when we talk Nephilim these days, I think it's going to be much more not subliminal, but much more. It would be less obvious. Like powers that be don't care about making a giant these days because a giant is just a larger bullet stopper. Um, they want somebody like a Captain America, somebody that has been augmented, and for all intents and purposes, they look like everybody else, but they have super intelligence or super strength or super whatever, and they're augmented in a way that they stand apart when it comes time to make to, whatever to action something. But it's not that they are 10 feet taller or anything like that. I don't see that as being um, logical in my mind. Mark Collins, you believe the U.S. Well, who do you believe is going to take the helm in the U.S.? As of right now, it looks like Trump is, which to me is somewhat exciting because if I'm looking at this kind of technique, so that would watch on. Is that the way it's going to happen? I have no idea. I think it would be divinely ironic if that were like, I mean, can you imagine the last Trump? That would be heads would explode. Okay, Pookie, Alan West for National Security Advisor, Captain Director. Alan West. Yeah, I like Alan West. I've met him before. He's a nice guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Um, I also like McGregor, Douglas McGregor. Both of those guys are. Alan West is a lieutenant colonel. Douglas McGregor was a lieutenant colonel. I know a full boat colonel. I think promotable. I think he turned it down. Uh, but he has got an amazing head on his shoulders. He was under the Trump administration the first time, so I would not be surprised if he is not brought back in some capacity. Um, Kash Patel was the Secretary of Defense very briefly before Trump left the last time. He would be a good guy as well. He's very knowledgeable and highly into the military investment side of things. So, um, no, not McGregor. Yeah, he's not pro-Israel, to my understanding. He's not anti-Semite, but he's McGregor is the kind of person who's like, why are we sending money to Israel? So that may be a detractor for him. But I think in terms of his knowledge of uh, war and fighting and conflict and the history behind it, et cetera, and he's hard to beat in terms of like his knowledge of things. Um, but again, he was in the Trump administration the first time. I think he would be brought back the second time, and he's been loyal to Trump this whole time. So I don't know that I don't see why he would not do anything, but I don't know to what role he would play. Uh, I've listened to Tyler's last two videos on America's Mystery Babylon. He's supportive of scripture and history. Do you see a definite interpretation to Revelation 17 and 18 chronologically? So my issue with Tyler's interpretation of America's Mystery Babylon, he and I talked about this at length, and I think if his interpretation is correct, that's Revelation 17 and 18 are like, when you go to church and you listen to a pastor preach, and at the end of it, he might summarize the entirety of the sermon at the end. In summary, blah, 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 blah. If that Revelation 17 and 18 are summaries, then I can certainly see America as like the anchors of the statue of Daniel's statue, like Mystery Babylon, because you're whatever the system is before the kingdoms, the beast kingdom takes over. Now, I drew this out, and I don't have it anywhere for you guys to see it, but basically, I had a line of Revelation. So start, finish, and here you have Revelation 1, because the book divides itself up into three parts. In Revelation 1:19, it says, "Write the things you have seen, the things that are, and the things which shall take place after these things." So, to be that John saw with Revelation 1, he saw the Lord by seven stars in his hand, seeing it. So that's chapter 1. Chapters 2 and 3, because it's 95 AD when this is being recorded, and this is 60 years or so into the church age, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of churches around the Roman Empire at this point, and even further out. And Jesus chose these particular 7 churches when he could have chosen any number of churches. He could have chosen 14 or 12 or 3 or 22. He chose 7, and he chose them in this particular area of Turkey or Asia Minor. Then that to me signifies this is speaking to the church age at large too. There's multiple layers of application. But in my Revelation thing, I had what's chronological seems to be the judgments. And then at the bottom, you have all these chapters that are parenthetical insertions that are kind of like a blow up of what's going on, like Revelation 13. So Revelation 13 is in the middle of the book of Revelation, yet it highlights the rise of the beast kingdom. And we see the rise of the beast kingdom in chapter 6, verse 1, with the rider on the white horse who goes forth with a crown and a bow in his hand to conquer and conquering. So to me, that is the Antichrist, or it's the system of the Antichrist. So Revelation is a parenthetical insertion that covers the kind of the life span of the beast kingdom and what they ultimately accomplish in terms of bringing about the mark. So if Revelation 17 and 18 are those summations of everything, then it is possible, yes, that America is Mystery Babylon, and that she is destroyed, and she's not Babylon, she is mystery, or a mystery. This form of Babylon is a mystery, because I know that there's a division between there's a comma, mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots, etc., etc. There's other views that see this as a religion, a religious system that rises up after in some vein or fashion of Semiramis, who was Nimrod's wife, and she was the mother of harlots, the creator of these false religious systems. So, I mean, there's that kind of religious aspect to it as well. I don't think it's actual Babylon like in Iraq, because I've been to Iraq, and if that's the case, then we're a long ways off from that ever becoming anything even remotely uh, functioning as a superpower. That place is a dumpster fire, floating down a river, going off a cliff into oblivion. So I guess it depends on how you look at it. I I'm kind of like, well, I think his name is Festus. I told Tyler I'm Festus. You almost convinced me. Like I, again, that's not a hill that I'm going to fight on or die on. Because we none of us know how that's going to play out necessarily until it happens. I mean, we'll be up in the heavens watching this unfold. So at that point, it will make sense to us. But for me, I think if this is a summation, then I think okay, then that makes sense. But I know what did make sense to me. What Tyler was talking about is that you have the statue that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed about that Daniel interprets, and the head of gold is Babylon. The shoulder and arms are of silver are of Persia, and then so on and so forth. Greece. I think he's on point with the terms that it's all Babylon. It's all a form of Babylon, and it's just moving different locations. The seats of power, Satan's power is moving through time. And if that's the case, then it does make sense that we are the ankles right now. And so I I don't know. I don't know. I like how his mind thinks about that, and we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. I know a lot. He's not the only one. I think I want to say that Gary Stearman believes that the United States is Babylon, but not all of the United States. It's like the megalopolis. This is the from Washington D.C. to Boston is basically a giant city. That could be Babylon. Um, I think Lee Brainerd thinks the United States is Babylon too. I'm not 100% sure. I know Andy Woods believes Babylon is Babylon, like in Iraq area. I just man, that's a stretch for me to see that. I'm not saying that it can't happen. I have a hard time seeing it, having been there, and even knowing right now that they're still a failed state. That'd be like saying that Somalia or Haiti is going to be the next world superpower. Maybe, but man, it would take a lot to happen between now and whenever that would happen. Um, not only the failed states, they have no. Uh, they're at significant disadvantages in their locations and uh, natural resources. I mean, Iraq is running out of water, fresh water. I mean, there's all number of manner of things that are going wrong with those places. Now, I do have a thought that when the United States collapses after the rapture, that the United Nations is no longer going to stay in New York. It's going to move to wherever. It'll move back to the old world somewhere, back in this probably the Middle East somewhere, because that'll be the center of the world at that point. So my thought is that there was perhaps Neom or Rome, some other place where the United Nations will set up their headquarters. Allison, yeah, I again, I don't, I just have a hard time seeing Babylon. I have a hard time seeing it. And if in what Tyler made mention of that I thought was a great example, he said, if I'm that statue and you're looking at me and my head is Tyler, well, my feet are also Tyler. They're just a different part of Tyler. And so different location, different functions, but we're all Tyler. And if the head of gold is Babylon, and we know that Satan's seat can move, right? It moves to Pergamus in the days of when John was writing this. And then we know that that throne that was there was moved to Germany. And I personally believe that Satan doesn't set his throne necessarily on the earth. He sets it above the earth because he wants to look down upon us. Then I don't know. Again, this is like one of the first things one of my first interviews I ever did with Tom Hughes a couple years ago. I said explicitly, like, because we got to the Q&A part of it, and I was like, I reserve the right to say I don't know, because honestly, Bill Salas, Tom Hughes, I don't care who you ask, we all have an opinion about some of these things because they haven't happened yet, and we're basically all looking at the same evidences and looking at trying to make sense of it, and we come at it from different places and from different perspectives. And honestly, none of us are going to know specifically how that's going to play out because we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. I just personally have a hard time seeing Andy Wood's perspective of it, of being actually in Iraq. I I think that's, if that's the case, then the rapture and the tribulation, all that stuff is decades away because that place is a mess. Good question though, Sherry. Thank you. Another one from you. Is the book of Revelation chronological or is chapter 17 and 18? Okay, so I kind of answered that already. The judgments I see as being chronological, but then there is all those number of parenthetical insertions that are like expansions on particular things that I don't know that they are in order. I think they're just expansions on particular parts of what's going to happen during the 7-year period. Okay, Black Rock, or excuse me, Black Rock. Black Oak Outdoors. Question: do you consider November and the election outcome to be big enough milestone to quickly take the country into being exploited for an attack by its enemies? I think right now is an opportune time for them to attack. If Xi Jinping or Putin or any of these other world leaders that don't like us watch that debate, they've got to be having their Secretary of War, Secretary of Defenses drumming up uh, potential actions right now and what they can do, given what's leading us right now. We're at the weakest. In fact, I think between now and election is the most dangerous. Not the election. Between now and the inauguration day is the most dangerous time in American history, and I think we're incredibly vulnerable right now. So it is far and away the most precarious time we've ever been at as a nation. Even I would even say even during the worst parts of the Revolutionary War, because at least then you had people that were capable. Of, they didn't have the resources and they didn't necessarily have the manpower, but they had intelligent men running things. The men we have running things today are the opposite of intelligent. Okay, Allison, I see your comment. I would recommend you go and watch Tyler's 2 videos or 3 videos on this, because unless you've already watched them, I don't know. He supports everything he's saying with scripture, so I don't. I'm not going to defend his position. I just don't think it's Babylon in Iraq, and I've been to Iraq. I've been to the Middle East many times, and that place is a dumpster fire. And if it is that place, then it's going to take a terraforming of the geopolitical world today. It would take literally, it would take the collapsing of the United States. It would take the reordering of all the world order. It would take the collapse of Islam. It would take a whole lot of things to make that place even livable. And even then, how could you say that Iraq or Babylon is on many waters? The merchant, they see it burning from the, like you don't see Baghdad or any place like that from the sea. There, you might see Kuwait right there. But I think some of the descriptions in there, the geographical descriptions given there, you have to do a whole lot of legal skills in order to get to that. Iraq being the actual battle. So, and maybe it is. I don't know. It'd be like saying, Kansas is on many waters. It's just how do we get there? You know, Kansas is not on many waters. Michigan, maybe you can count all the Great Lakes and stuff, but let's see, Iraqi. Nancy C. Question: there are many interpretations of what people consider the Great Deceit or Deception. Could be alien abduction or the rapture, false Messiah. What exactly do you think is What do you think this goes to today? What's your Second Thessalonians? Verse 9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteousness that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth about truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So, just given the context of the chapter itself, Paul is correcting a false teaching that had been put forth in his name, that the rapture, the resurrection, all that had already occurred. It leads me to believe that these might be the workings of like Hymenaeus and Philetus, whose teaching that we see are Paul calls as cancerous, or that they overthrew the faith of some, and that they are teaching that the resurrection is past. If it's those same guys and that's the same kind of context, when it is pertaining to the deception that surrounds the rapture of the church, because it seems like the context of that is what is about. And I think about it kind of twofold. On one hand, we live in a day and age today where social media has allowed the idea, the concept of it to be vocalized and taught around the world, right? I think this is a good thing that God has allowed this open door to be open to such an extent that I'm not just teaching about the rapture in my little church, my little town. I'm doing it on this medium that people around the United States and here and South there, wherever, uh, can all talk about this. We're all sharing exactly. It's not just me, but David, Jeremiah, anybody that's teaching on this, good, bad, or indifferent. The idea of the rapture now is a quantity, even amongst unchurched people. They have a vague idea of what it is, right? Talked about, discussed through movies, through books, and now through social media. So that is a positive thing. And I think that God has allowed us this open door at this time to do just that. So that when the rapture does happen, people will know on the other side to say, I remember I watched a video on that, or a friend of mine said something about this, or and at the time I blew it off, and now, the Holy Spirit now can illuminate their understanding of like, guy was talking about this 6 months ago or a year ago, whatever the case. And that might lead to their main, salvation of it. On the other side, you have Hollywood, you have national events, international events like Roswell, and all of the sightings that we're seeing with UFOs really encapsulate the work and rapture the world for the last 70 years or so, captured in movies and books and TV shows and everything, art, music. And now in 2019, they had the first congressional hearings on it, where they're publicly discussing the government, U.S. government, the investors are they're flying all over the place. There's that actual video proof of them with regards to it's the Tic Tac videos and the video, I think of the name of it, the FLIR, the forward-looking infrared cameras on the jets and stuff like that. That has solidified people happening, flying in our world. That seems intentional too. Two narratives going forward. You have the Baptist church, which is which was written, and now it became popularized uh, once people begin to take the Bible seriously again, mid to late 1800s, that gets brought forth as theological doctrines in certain uh, aspects of Christendom now begin to embrace it. And now you have this popularization of it through Hal Lindsey, the Lakers Planet Earth, and then the Left Behind books. And so it is a known thing. And at the same time, from let's say Darby, right? Let's talk Darby 1830 time frame. Fast forward 117 years, you have Roswell, the biggest known UFO event in U.S. history, well-known UFO event. 117 years later, now, right before Israel becomes a nation, and it becomes a thing in American culture, then it becomes a thing in European culture, Korean culture, all around the world. And it does seem to lead me to believe that that's a discussion that happens after the rapture, that the media, the world governments, and so on and so forth are going to have this kind of exploding rapture that makes sense to the most amount of people. Not everybody, to the most amount of people. And it seems like it's moving in that direction towards a UFO event, Project Bluebeam, something, something along that lines, where there is an intentional deception to keep people willfully ignorant on what just happened. Because Satan's greatest tool in all of this is keeping people ignorant on what is really happening or when we are in time. And so it seems to me that's the case, that there is a deception to that magnitude. What is interesting when it comes about we talk about UFOs and things, or UAPs, is the transition that the experts are making. Because it used to be when you talked about UFOs, it was extraterrestrials, that these were beings, intelligent beings from other parts of the galaxy or the other parts of the universe. But as they come here into our world, into our atmosphere, into our uh, domain, human domain, they are breaking the laws of physics. And so if they're from our same universe, it doesn't seem likely that they would be able to break the laws of physics, which seem to be unbreakable or defy the laws of physics. Some case, somebody had said that these were us from like a future time, coming back in time, etc. Likely, but they're still breaking the laws of physics. So then the transition goes from being extraterrestrial to now ultra terrestrial. These are things that are beings that are not bound to our dimension. They are interdimensional beings. That that is survival. These are fallen angels. These are these beings that God created that are bound our law, physics, a reality, because they can appear and disappear at will. They can be flying, and next thing you know, they're gone. They're just not there anymore. They're not even on radar, and they can do Mach 3 or Mach 4 and take a 90-degree right turn without stopping or slowing down. And these things defy the laws of physics. So now that the main thrust of this is that they're not extraterrestrial, they're ultra terrestrial. And even more recently, the idea is that these things are not just ultra terrestrial, but they're crypto terrestrials, that they're in the earth already, made themselves unknown to man, but now begin to reveal themselves to me. And I think it was the guy named I was talking to Elliot about this. Michael Solis. He's a New Ager guy, but he was making the case we need a draft. That we need to draft. Why don't you let me draft again? Unless they're pushing the false flag event to where they need to. They have these things supposed to be coming out of the ground. And we have a large standing army to meet them and fight them. Because if you think about modern warfare technology is allowing us to hit and destroy things from further and further away. Missiles, ballistic missiles, intercontinental missiles, energy directed weapons, satellites, and ships. I mean, we're looking at not fighting land wars. We're looking at fighting from a distance and destroying from a distance. And so, why would you need a massive army? And so the thought is that from Roswell forward, there was a um, collusion, so to speak, between the surviving beings, alien beings, which I believe are fallen angels, are better disguising themselves as these beings, and they are working with the deep state military industrial complex, or whoever you want to think this is, the CIA, intelligence agencies, whatever. And that's why it went from everybody was talking, all of a sudden there was complete silence from there on out. I mean, the government would never admit to anything, and they did Project Blue Book and all these other things to try and discredit alien cases. So the thought is that the reason that to clone these alien beings, these fallen angels, and they call it a manufactured intelligence, to clone them, and they're making these massive armies that will one day come out of the ground at the rapture, and it'll look like some kind of invasion. And then they will have the armies that can stand up and defeat them, fight them, or whatever, and then that'll look like what happened. So that was a long way around to answer your question. Yes, I do think there will be. Uh, uh, I do think that there will be some type of false flag event that will entail aliens or manufactured clones or whatever, and that will be the argument that people um, will believe this lie. And as I've said many times, a rapture is a global level event. It's going to require a global level distraction, and I think that deception, the great lie that people buy into, is that this was aliens. So, okay. Thank you, Nancy, for that question. Diane, question: next in line after Harris is Mike Johnson. How do you fix that? Well, one of the alternatives I thought of that is a possibility. I think it's a slim possibility, but the Democrats may realize that they're screwed, excuse my language, in this election. There's really no good way forward for them to go forward. And they may take that money, if whatever money they have, and invest it not in the presidential candidate, but invested in flipping the House, or flipping the House and the Senate together. Or they have the Senate now, but keeping the Senate Democrat and keeping the House Democrat as well. And that they could use that money. And the Republicans did this years ago during the 96, I think, election between Clinton and, I'm blanking on this guy's name. He was the senator from Kansas or Nebraska. I can't think of the guy's name. It was between Clinton and Bob Dole. Dole, that's what it is. Yeah, Bob Dole. And the Republicans didn't have a great candidate with Dole, and they knew that, and so they began to take all that money and support and go to the down ballot to all the House seats, and presumably the Senate seats. So I think that there is a possibility that they do this, and they take one on the chin this time around. But I think there's too much at stake now, because they have broken so many rules and so many laws to keep power, that I don't think they can afford to do that. So it is a small, slight possibility. As far as Johnson goes, if the Republicans obviously keep the House, and he's going to be Speaker again for the next 4 years. So Okay. Tom, what are your thoughts on CIA interference in this election? I think there's a great possibility that they do. Um, I watched a documentary last night on J. Edgar Hoover and just the amount of secrets that guy has held. And even after he died, only a handful of people knew where those things were, or how to read it, his notes and things and stuff. He had dirt on everybody. Everybody. He had dirt on Ronald Reagan, Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, Roosevelt's wife. I mean, the guy is in power basically like 1918 to like 1960 something. I think. Well, no, I think he died in 66. I think he died. Um, but yeah, he had extensive notes on everybody, and so CIA is incredibly powerful organization. If they don't want Trump to win, and there's no good way to, to deal with that reality, I mean, they could take it to that next level. You know, I don't want to say what that is, but um, with that said, Trump is one of the most investigated individuals on the planet. I mean, he's had his life, every square inch of his life, dug up and examined and used for political fodder. I mean, they have gone, they're going to any lengths they can to take him out. And so he is one of the most examined individuals on the planet. And the fact that he's still standing, I don't know. I don't see that, other than at this point, the only way to stop him at this point is to go the JFK route. But if anybody does it, that's who my money would be on. Just Vicky, question, Pete. I'm wondering if the pastors and teachers um, could formulate an online appeal to Trump organization requesting to change his stance on the abortion topic. Thoughts? I mean, that's. I mean, I would probably. That would be something to bring up to like a guy like Jack Hibbs, who's connected to levels. Jack Hibbs was probably the best. I don't know that Trump will do anything prior to the election. After he wins, he might change his stance on it. But just like in the debate, his handler, everybody told him, do not take the bait. Just let Biden defeat himself. When you show the screen, show pause, you show presidential, stand there and let Biden make a fool of himself. And that's what he did. It was very effective. And so I think this side of the election, he's going to stay away from that topic as far as he can. And he got what he wanted. He wanted the states to answer the motion, and that's how it's being voted and overturning Roe v. Wade. So I know that's definitely something we could bring up to Jack Hibbs. I think that he would have the political muscle out of any of us that are in this community. Not to say that I couldn't. I just don't think anybody would have to do it. Yeah, Diane. And honestly, I think personally, I don't think Trump is a Christian. He's Christian friendly to Christians. I think he believes in God. I don't think he has that personal relationship, born again nature of a Christian. So clearly, he doesn't have that spiritual discernment because of who he surrounded himself with during his last term. I would, with the exception of like Robert Jeffries, all the other folks, I wouldn't I wouldn't hold a charity telephone thing with them with the young folks. I don't want to be associated with any of them. They're mostly 35 folks. Okay, let's see. Cookies. Question: how much of a hand does Jeff Ryan right now is cheaper staff have behind the scenes with like times? Uh, Probably a huge game. I think Trump or I think Biden right now is not running anything. I think the cabinet members, Lincoln, Mayorkas, Buttigieg, uh, it was a long guy was the Federal Reserve, that's name, or I think it's a she for some Buttigieg. All those folks meet in a cabinet probably once a week or twice a week, and they address particular issues, and then they hit Biden up once a week or twice. Basically running all that, orchestrating that. So yeah, I think that's how that's going down. And I would probably venture a guess to say that Joe Biden is actually she's probably right zero than anybody. So Joe and then his chief of staff, they're orchestrating all these cabinet level meetings, and then they're just getting him to sign off on it. He needs to sign whatever, and then he's got Pierre, whatever her name is, spokesman, White House spokesman, uh, Jean Pierre, whatever her name is. She's just going out there and running gibberish, and basically she is a master. It's saying a lot about this. Yeah. That's surprising, but I think if any of us could look at if, how anything came, so the layout of Washington D.C. and all the things that we have a huge emotional roots to it. What do you think? I was super behind this architecture and their designs for the United States. J. Edgar Hoover, man, that guy was a 33rd degree Freemason. It seems like all these big power brokers are involved in some form of secret society or another. There were the Bushes, and the guy that's married to the Heinz Pickett, or he was running for a 2004 election. I'm blanking on this guy's name. 2004, Kerry, yeah, John Kerry. Um, him and Bush were both in Skull and Bone Society. I mean, all these guys, they don't get to where they are without being involved in this stuff. Um, so, how much of that symbolism controls the destiny of the United States? I would say, I know that God is the one that has allowed the United States to be where she is, and He had prospered her for a time, and I believe now we're in that going back of the blessings. So, really good the bad stuff because of the cultural and societal choices we're making. But all right, I think that's it for all the questions. Thank you, Sarah, for getting all this. A lot of good, hard, controversies. Um, Sarah Huckabee, yeah, she was voice. I do know, and looking at Pastor Gary's comment here, their prime minister, so Sunni Riak or what, Reinak or whatever, can't think of the guy's name. I think he's Indian or Pakistani. The former prime minister for the Tories is out, and you've got a socialist in there now. So the UK is going to be in for some rough times. And that's, to me, again, that goes back to whose policies do you want to live under? And if Christians just sit on their hands and say, I'm not going to vote because it's just a selection, and enough Christians do that, well, yeah, somebody that doesn't have your best interest at heart is going to get selected. And you can vote your conscience. That's fine. Just don't be surprised that, or you can vote third party, or you can vote write-in name. All those things, I say, do what your conscience and what the Spirit leads you to do. But recognize that until the Lord returns, we still have to live here, and we still have to live under the policies and the governmental structures that are over us. And if Christians sit on their hands and don't vote, you're gonna, wherever you live, is gonna be like Portland, Oregon, or Austin, Texas. It's gonna turn into a nightmare, and you're gonna have to live there. And there's an old saying. I don't know who's. It's like an old proverb from India or something. It says, "No single raindrop thinks it's responsible for the flood." And so Christians make up, even if it's Christian in name only, still make up a huge majority in the United States. And if they would simply exercise their God-given rights to vote, and to vote or put up candidates that are worthy of the votes, I think we would, I don't want to say forestall what's coming, because I don't think any of us can change that, but we can make the times in which we live more tolerable, and the systems that we live under more tolerable. And it's like me. I believe the rapture is going to happen any day now. I'm 100% committed to the pre-trib position and looking forward to that blessed hope. But that doesn't stop me from getting involved in my local school board. That doesn't involve me from going to the prison here and sharing the gospel. And that just because the Lord's going to come back soon doesn't give us the leeway to not do anything. And I'm not preaching to you guys. That's preaching to the choir. I'm just saying that there were a lot of teachers out there that will just say, well, not all of this is rigged and it's not worth getting involved. I don't buy that. I think that based off the evidence, based off the scriptural evidence, based off the historical evidence, based off of the events and what we're seeing happening around us, and the things that the Bible says are gonna happen. We're starting to see all of that technology, all of the geopolitical alignments, all that stuff is happening at a breathtaking pace. It doesn't mean that the rapture will happen this year. It could still be a year or two off, and we still got to live here. I know he's coming soon. I know it in my heart, and I know in my. You all know this too. We can't just resign ourselves to, what we pre-trib folks get accused of so often is that we'll see, like the Millerites. We're selling everything we have and just moving to a hill and waiting for the Lord to come back in white robes. And then obviously, if you're familiar with the Great Disappointment in 1844, everybody that were following the Millerites, as they were called, basically did that. They sold everything they had, and they waited on the hill for the Lord to come back, because they believed it was going to come back in 1844. I don't think we're the Millerites. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's probably a great number of Christians right now who are wholly banking on the rapture to change their current predicament. And I'm saying that we don't know the day or the hour. We don't know I'm 100% convinced we know the season. I believe we're in the season, but how long is the season going to last? I mean, based on what Tyler and I dug up in our evidence, I think this is a great 4-year window that we're in right now. But I'm not going to stop being involved in my community until that happens, because I don't want, however long we're here, I don't want my community to turn into Portland or San Francisco or Austin. I mean, I don't know. I mean, each of us are going to be held accountable for our lives. We're not judged for our sins, because our sins are already paid for at the cross. But I do believe that the things we did for Christ in this time will be held accountable for. Yeah, we're supposed to be salt and light, Jason. That's exactly right. And I feel like if we're going to be salt and light, we're preservatives, and we're trying to preserve what's good in our society. And the light is we're trying to shine darkness on those evil and nefarious things that are going on. And it's not just that if you say, like, I'm just a one issue voter, right? I just vote on the issue of abortion, or I just vote on the issue of property taxes, or whatever it is that you think about all the people right now that are suffering, that are being human trafficked, that are being moved across the border because of the policies of this government, this current administration, all the wickedness that is going on. And if we don't vote, we're basically voting with our silence. And like I'm thinking of the guy from the 1940s, the German pastor, and blanking on his name. Anyways, but to not say anything is to basically give permission for the evil. Bonhoeffer, thank you, for the evildoers to continue to do evil. And just like the Christian church in Germany, that allowed or tolerated the Nazis to rise up amongst them, we're on that threshold now. I mean, if and that's why I think it is so. And I'm not trying to come at this from an Amerocentric position, but as the United States goes, so goes the world. Because right now the world is kind of dancing to our tune, because America influences so much around the world right now. The Pax Americana, as I call it. We are the dominant influencer in the world. And if we turn to wickedness and we embrace wickedness, the world is going to. Or if the world is tolerating wickedness and we stand apart from it, others will join us in standing apart from it, just like we stood apart from the Nazis and stood against the Nazis. Certainly there were many Nazi sympathizers in the United States at that time, and socialists and communists and stuff like that. But we had to shine a light on it and show that it was evil. Communism is evil. Unbridled capitalism is evil. I mean, there's evil in everything that comes from the realm of mankind. So we need to look at this through a biblical lens. But it's not even. I think right now it's not even choosing the lesser of two evils. I think there is an evil, and there is a not perfect, not good, or good but not perfect system that allows for good to flourish. And one is suppressing good, and the other is allowing good to flourish. And I think that's kind of where we are with this election. And I do think it's the last one. Whoever wins, it's going to be the last election that we know of, because either the Lord will have come back, or United States will cease to exist as the United States, because they've come too far. They are not going to let us go back to the way things were. And they've got this whole great reset thing going on. So Agenda 20. Yeah. Moments Divine, Bridget Carroll, Garden. Well, much about food garden. It's been just what usually. I knew this in Utah. So I was one man of the people Disney. So good. Incredibly so good. But great creativity. Um, at a minimum, the bare minimum, we can the way down. Yes, everything. Okay. We'll get involved in that. Whatever that looks like to you. Or teaching in a prison, whatever it is. Leading a Boy Scouts, the trail life, or some of those other groups are permitted to Boy Scouts. Um, I think that's where we're at right now. Okay, apologize for the sound going off. Again, we're gonna get through. So, thank you, and God bless. Hopefully, I'll see you on later this week. Possibly Thursday or Friday. And thanks for bearing with the bad audio until I get tired. Okay, everybody's saying audio is going out. So, yeah. God bless.